I'm Stephen DeBacker. I am the coordinator for Math 215 this coming fall.
And you're also going to tell us about Math 285?
And I will also tell you about Math 285.
So can you tell us in a nutshell, what are Math 215 and Math 285 about?
So the students who go into Math 215 and 285 have already had 1 year of calculus. So they've learned about one variable integration, one variable differentiation, sequences and series, and how to tie all these ideas together through the fundamental theorem of calculus and things like that. So 215 and 285 are multivariable calculus classes. So instead of doing things in one dimension, you do it in many dimensions.
What is the preparation for taking these courses? Like, what should students have done beforehand to be successful in these courses?
Okay, so you have to in order to be successful in 215 and 285, not only do you have to put in the time, but you also have to have really understood the calculus that you learned during the 1 year calculus class you took. And this means at least two things. One of them is you have to have very good mechanical, very good handle on the mechanics. So if I ask you what is the derivative of arctangent of x, like you shouldn't have to think too long to respond 1 over 1 plus x squared. If I ask you what's the integral from 0 to 5 of x to the 5th, right, you better be able to evaluate that pretty darn quickly. Just the mechanical things that you're supposed to learn in that 1 year of calculus, you should have under control. But you need more than that. You also need a pretty good conceptual understanding of what calculus is about. You know, when you take a derivative of a function at a point, what does that mean? I mean, one possible meaning is that it's the slope of the tangent line. When you take an integral from a to b of some function f, what are you doing, right? You can think of it as area under the curve. What's the fundamental theorem of calculus actually say? You know, one possible interpretation is something like the sum of the rates of change is equal to the total change. But these ideas of what the math actually is telling you are really important, because when you ramp it up to more than one dimension, you need some place to hang your hat in order to make sure you understand what's going on. And the conceptual understanding is mighty important.
And so the preparation that students usually have is something like Calc BC, getting a 5 on the BC exam, or if they're not freshmen, something like completing Math 115 and 116,
Yep.
Or equivalent transfer credit.
Right, so if you have a BC 5 or have completed 116 at Michigan, or 156 or 186, then you should be very prepared.
Okay. What are the major differences between 215 and 285? They're both Calc 3, so how are they different?
So 285 is an honors version, which means that there's a little bit of linear algebra in the class to help package all the multidimensional things that happen in multivariable. And there's also a touch more theory. So for example, when you discuss continuity in 215, we just say you have to be careful and give examples of why you have to be careful. But in 285, it's actually a full-blown, probably a week-long discussion about what continuity actually means in this context.
Is there a difference in the workload between the courses?
I think the workloads are actually fairly similar. It's just that the homework in 285 is a little more probably considerably more theoretical.
And how about like how the classes are run in terms of class size or pedagogically? Are there differences?
Right. So 285, they tend to be that they are smaller classes. The IBL section is capped at 18, 20, whatever the usual cap is for such classes. And the non-IBL sections of 285 are capped at 32, I think. Of course, that can go up and down a little bit depending on demand. And you meet with your professor 4 hours a week. 215 is very different, and it will be very different this fall for sure, because it's a large class, and the university has told us it has to be online. So what that means is for every section that we cover, like maybe one day it's going to be partial derivatives or something like that, I will produce 1 or 2 short videos, they're 10 to 15 minutes long, that cover the topic for that day. And embedded in those videos, so you'll have to watch those before the actual class time. Embedded in those videos, there'll be problems, because I won't have a lot of time to work through examples. And then when you go to your class and meet with your professor, who's your instructor, you'll actually go through those examples and also be able to ask additional questions during that hour time. And you only meet with your professor 3 hours a week. The extra hour is given over to labs, where if you were here, you'd be doing computer labs in the basement of East Hall. It's probably going to be virtual, but we don't know yet exactly how that part's going to run because the university hasn't told us. And so one of the things that people struggle with in multivariable is, or it's a human struggle, it has nothing to do with multivariable, is visualizing mathematics in more than one dimension is visualizing anything, not just math, in more than one dimension is very difficult for us. And so the computer labs help us do that part of life, like, you know, what does a paraboloid of revolution really look like, etc. And so you use the computer to generate these pictures of these objects so you can see what's going on.
Okay. Does 285 have a lab?
Nope, 4 contact hours a week with your instructor. The instructor, of course, may require computer things. That's completely instructor dependent.
Can you say a little bit more about the, like, what you mean by the IBL sections of 285 versus the non-IBL sections?
In these classes, it won't be straight up lecture, and with occasionally students raising their hand to ask questions. Instead, the students will be expected to be active participants in their learning and work through worksheets as the material goes by.
So that's one section of 285, the one that meets at 2:30?
Correct.
Okay. What personally is your favorite thing about teaching this course, Math 215?
So my favorite thing is this, and it might strike you as a bit weird, but it is my favorite thing. So when you teach, you know, I teach kindergarten through teachers of math, and the thing that's always kind of a bummer when you're teaching people is that many of them have already seen what you're talking about. This just ain't true for multivariable calculus. Like maybe out of 100 people in a class of 215 class, 3 or 4 of them will have seen some part of multivariable, but most of them have not. And so everything I talk about is brand new to them. And that's just kind of cool to actually be able to teach something to somebody and have it be their very first time through the material.
So suppose you're a student who has taken Calc BC and gotten a 5. There's Math 215, Math 285, but then there's also this Math 185 that you could take. Why would you go back to taking calculus, Math 185, when you could just go on to Calc 3 and take 215 and 285?
Right. So when you're making the decision about what to take between, you know, 185, 175, 285, 295, 156, and sorry if I missed some of these classes, 215. So it's not, there is no blanket answer. So so it kind of depends on what you want to do with your life, and it also depends a bit on what courses are coming up for you. So for example, if you want to be a physics major and in electromagnetics is your next class, then you better be taking 215 or 285 because this math was developed to answer questions in that field of physics. So my best advice is that you talk to your math advisor about this and tell them what your plans are, as best you know, of course, because you're only freshmen. You don't really know what your plans are, but talk to your advisor and tell them what your plans are, and then they can try to set you on a path that's best for you.